So this part for the emergency uh, sign, I have it typed out. I've used the font of impact, and again, if you go through this, it'll cascade through these different pieces. The character that you place in there only goes as 72 points, which is 1 inch, and beyond that, either enter the number or place it so that the emergency is up there on the E. Just grab this with the Shift key, and it'll extend it out a little bit to that distance. And you can see that it has the part that you can do with the kerning and or the scaling. So you can actually just scale it across for that. It'll keep it in proportion. And again, just still looking at the image as far as the height of the lettering and just kind of playing it. And if you do Command or Shift X, it'll switch the fill and stroke so that you can adjust it from here. So here's this point. This little circle on here just to turn it into a shape tool into the editing for the text itself. So it gives you that particular piece. So here's the type. And again, taking the coloring, just going for the red and X to take that off of there. So not too difficult. This bottom part has this smart sign graphic placed in it. So just using condensed Helvetica just to get a simple layout for it. Again, you can minimize the point size here. Keeps it in proportion. Just placing it onto here. The only thing that you might be connected to, if you've forgotten, is taking the type, and Option 8 puts in a glyph for that dot, and you can see this one's a little bit too large, so when the character palette has this in here, you can make it a little bit smaller. By making it smaller, it lowers it, so down at the text at the bottom allows you to offset it a little bit so that you can place it into there. And one quick way is just to copy it and just highlight the other one and paste it right over the top of it. So it makes it a quick way to illustrate that section. Okay, and the photograph, it's a picture, so just try to get the image close to it as a resolution. You can see it's a square piece of paper. Inside has this rounded rectangle. So here's the rectangle here. I'm going to increase it with the arrows, so there's the piece itself. Going to give it a gradient, okay, and Command Option and hit the bottom to send it to the back. So you can kind of get an idea if the image has this piece. So just a quick gradient, have it light. This is with some coloring to it, not too bad. And while it's still there, go to Effect and Stylize, and you can put in a little bit of a drop shadow. Now keep in mind, Preview allows you to see it multiply, lets it show through. The color is there. You can change the percentage to change the coloring value from black. It's at 75%, so you could put it at 25. You just have to come out of there a little bit to show the difference of it. That's not too bad. So I click OK, and now I have this emergency sign with all these graphics placed in here. So that puts it in there, sets it up, and then, like I said, trying to do a little bit of the tone, which we'll do in a second. Up here, this is the rectangle for this large piece of tape. Okay, so you can see the sections of it here. You can either take the pen tool and add an anchor point. There's a couple ways to do it, so I've added an anchor point to it. Take the direct selection tool, and when you click on it, you can move this part out and see how it extends itself from that point out. Inside the pen tool, you have the anchor point tool that allows you to grab and curve this. As opposed, you can obviously take the points and the handles. If you click on it again, it resets it. So it's just similar to Photoshop, but it gives you a little bit of an angle curvature that happens to be there, or you could have just drawn it straight through. So just trying to show you a couple different ways here. And if you know the keystroke for this, Shift plus the letter C. So here I have the spacebar held down, moves the point, let go, and I still can curve this section, but I'll keep that straight. I just move it out with the spacebar. So it's just some little tricks, at least, with this curve. So there it is with the curve. I click on the eyedrop, that fills it with this color. So you can kind of see if it's going to be the color I want. Maybe lighten it up to the lighter value of this. And you'll notice that it has the serrated edges all the way around. So just to see it, I'm going to put a black outline on it and go to Effects. And when you get into Distort and Transform, you'll see all these different options, zigzag at the bottom. And so far when you hit the preview, it has these shapes. The size of it is 10 points. There it is larger, so you don't need it that large. Ridges per segment, so just kind of stretching this across. And you can see it's going to be pretty high. This one, just going to lower it down a little bit. Not that low, maybe that low. And if you hit it on smooth, you can get a smooth edge line coming across there. So you can see the ridges per segment is what that part is giving it, it's absolute points. So it's going to tighten it up on that side. Click OK, and then just take off the black line. So now I have this particular piece shaded, and since it's right here, we'll just kind of show it a little bit. Taking the mesh tool, and when you click on this, like if you click down below, it's going to have a lot of serrated pieces. So I'm just going to grab a couple and maybe eyedrop that color, go back to U, and try to build up this coloring. So when you see this, make sure it's on the X part right there, give it a brighter color. That's the obvious color that's there, but here's the piece that it is, so the color shows up in here, and you can darken it if you want to from that point. So I'm trying to use the palette, and once it's on this grid, you can move this later. I'm just going to put a couple tones on here as it comes through, and if you put them right next to each other, so that's another hatch line coming across it, and you can actually highlight it. So it's a quick, easy way to just play right here with the slider to show that color change. And again, here's when it's on this, if you click right on that line, let me zoom in a little bit, it shows a little bit easier. So, and again, here's all I'm doing is changing a little bit of the color here, not too much that way. And if I go right next to it, I can get a highlight to it right on that edge. So it's trying to build up that particular selection. And again, if you come down to this point, here's the coloring for it. And if I go right next to it, it allows me to lighten that piece up. Okay, so there's the way to kind of make the tape. Now you also notice that this is transparent, so why this is selected, take a look at the transparency right here and just minimize this down a little bit. So now the paper is going to be placed right inside of that. So I'm just going to set this, well, not too far over, because when you see, look at the depression of this tape, you can do that as well. So let's try it. There's the white edge, and I'm just going to go right inside of this. Go with a darker line to it, maybe a little darker. So you can kind of see that position. The direct selection tool allows you to take these inside points and kind of bend them around a little bit. So you can move them, and you'll see that they have handles which represent the points and the curvature, so you can really get some fine tuning on this. And keep in mind, this is in Illustrator, so it's still a vector image that shows up, and that gives you that line. So that's doing it with the textured lines on the side and this piece up close here. Let's see if I did that too far. Maybe. Okay. So that gives you the tape, and then the paper that this is on, I'll just do the paper with the pen tool, kind of dragging it, curving it as I go, putting this down to here. Stretching this across right here, getting a little curvature there. Shift X so you can still see the stroke out there. And again, just using the white of this paper, keep it behind it so you can kind of see it still. And just sending it across. So now this has that selection using the U shape. Let me just keep it as a solid grid here, I think. So here's this, hold off on that a second. So with any of these pieces lined up here, builds that part up. And this is allowing, again, to give you some of these highlights onto this paper. And again, with the direct selection tool, you can adjust these points. And using the U, again, gives you a little crispness on some of these. So if some of this corner has the shading to it, otherwise you can take the direct selection tool, select the point, and it'll give you that shadow to it. And again, it gives you a little bit of flexibility, like I said, is moving these all across each section. So now putting this back, taking a look at the section for the layers. Now I have this particular piece. And you can see, hopefully, again, with the letter A for the direct selection, you can lighten up some of the bits and pieces. And with the selection tool, you can clip and drag around to grab more than one point to build that up. And that'll get you set up with that piece. And the same, for example, with this section up here, I'm just going to use a drop shadow. And that'll get you setting this a little bit distance in there. There you go. So you have it with a little bit of the paper, this shadowing, using the grid system to build that across.